and we can go. So what do you guys think of mine?
Go for it. I talked about bunch.
It's I like it. I mean, that's a huge topic of what is going on in society right now. Like, because people were able to get their work done at home and everything like that, and business was done as it's used. So I think that's a major topic that is going on, especially in the big cities and everything, where like it might take you 2 hours to get to work rather than you can just stay at home, and that could be extra time of you working or something like that. So I think that goes into the direction that society is trying to push for. So I think that, I mean, that's positive.
Yeah, and I had
Yeah,
I had found some information where it said that oh, I just totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, here, 62% of employed Americans said they worked from home during the crisis. And I think 59% of those people said that they would continue to work at home. So, I mean, I understand that there's going to be people that can't, like healthcare workers and stuff like that. But I mean, maybe if it's not trying to keep the most amount of people at home. It's just trying to keep the people at home that want to stay home, that can stay home, and giving them a way to do that.
It's making it so traffic isn't mandatory for just existing.
Yes. Just to go to the grocery store or go get something to eat. You have the food preparation done at home all the time. And you can get whatever you want. I mean, to a limit, I guess.
Sure, but like idealistically moving towards a post-scarcity society and trying to really take an introspective look at working practices and work, or like employee practices and employer practices in society, and how much we should be working or where we should be working and how does that get dictated. I think there's a lot of good stuff there.
Oh yeah, and another thing that I found, it said that people that do work at home are more productive because of the environment that they're in.
Sure.
So I mean, yeah, it's a lot. So there's a lot going on with that. Because not only do you
even just
do what?
Go ahead.
So saying, not only do you have the less people out and about every day, that means that there's less traffic, there's less pollution, there's less congestion.
Mm-hmm. Bingo.
I think that there are a lot of different ways that you could go and try and tackle that, or use that ideology to try and tackle problems, like making more walkable areas in cities where, or like ensuring that there aren't food deserts places. Like there are places for you to actively get groceries or prepared foods within like what I would consider like local, like walking distance, or like creating a more
neighborhood market.
Sure, like a more independent, independent like locales that are self-sufficient. There we go. Self-sufficient is the word I was looking for. So you don't have to travel greater distances to work, to get groceries, to pay your bills, to go do whatever.
Yeah, that's a good idea though. Because that would reduce a tremendous amount of traffic. I mean, even to where like, say, modes of transportation, because due to being old age and stuff like that, they do fall apart or whatever. It gives a wider opportunity to fix those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
rather
not,
than
Yeah, less.
what's currently there.
yeah, not only can you fix the current stuff, I mean, if not as many people are using the mass transit, you could go smaller, like the bike sharing or the multi-seat motorcycles or stuff like that. You could go smaller
Yeah.
scale
Sure,
instead
and
of having to go the larger scale.
and for the larger scale projects, like Drake was saying, like there's just gonna be less wear and tear on them in the future once you get them like repaired and stuff. Like you've got that breathing room, less people are using them, so you get the opportunity to repair them, do your maintenance and stuff. And then if less people are using them afterwards, in theory, or like relying on those for their daily existence, um, they're going to be rode a whole lot less hard, and as such, like they might last longer. Wouldn't that be nice?
Nothing's made like it used to be. But
Yeah,
that was my idea.
there are thoughts I have on that. I like that.
I like that a lot.
All right, Drake, what you got?
Well, I was just thinking, uh, well, just rather than creating a system of carpooling.
Mhm.
So you know how you have like your Uber and stuff like that,
Sure.
but basically a Uber type system that is more designed for, hey, I'm going to this location, and people pack into your vehicle, and you're able to travel throughout where you're going to relieve other modes of transportation stuff, because you're, instead of moving one person in a vehicle, you'd be moving multiple. So it would
I like
reduce
that.
on like emissions and stuff like that, because one person versus, say, four people, that's four vehicles versus one. And as long as you're traveling within a certain radius that you can determine in the app, then you can ride with them or whatever, you know?
So the app would have like, hey, somebody near you called an Uber. Would you like to join them or something?
You were also heading in this direction at around this time. So it's kind of like part ride share, part like a little dash of social media, just for like being able to try and communicate with people in areas and stuff, and like that are going to places, and trying to figure out who's driving where or what. And I do like the approach of trying to minimize carbon emissions or what have you per capita per person. So I think that the immediate thing that stands out to me is I would consider myself a pretty trusting guy, and I go to a lot of music festivals and things like that. So that's the first place that I could imagine like wanting to use something like this. Like, there's a music festival a state or two away. I'd like to go with that. Go to that. I'll see who's heading in that general direction. The concern that I have is not that I would necessarily want background checks for everybody involved, but like if I'm getting into a car with a bunch of strangers, I feel like there are questions that I might want to have like answered about potentially who I'm riding with.
Yeah, I'm not a trusting
or
person, so I'm
who's
gonna
driving.
nope out of that.
See, I mean, like, I personally would never trust, like, I've never been in an Uber or anything like that. I don't want to be in an Uber
Yeah,
or anything like that. That's me personally, but like for the sake of the system, um, you could probably have like a score or whatever. I don't really trust scores and stuff because it just takes a person to snap on time, and then you don't know what it's gonna happen. Like, and that's just
sure.
real life. But uh, but you could basically have like, you know how they have reviews for Uber and stuff like that, and you have like different services like the premium and stuff like that. But have a system similar to Uber, but more for carpooling.
Sure. I follow that. So like if we were all going to a place together, I would be able to see that Drake is a 4-star ride sharer
You just
person.
require
Yeah.
background checks.
Probably also something to consider, because I don't care how many stars you have.
Yeah, have you guys ever ridden in an Uber though?
No,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
haven't.
I've
I
never
haven't.
done it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like a taxi, but more convenient and like,
it
I
is
don't know.
kind of scary though.
Sure,
But I don't
absolutely.
think about that too much.
I know my husband
Probably
had
that
one
or
of
that
those
way.
years ago. My husband's also
I mean,
6'3",
it's-
250, so he's not really a small guy.
Yeah. Yeah,
He doesn't have to
he's
worry
not
about
getting.
much.
No, he
Yeah,
doesn't.
he's not getting traffic. But yeah, I would agree. Like, there is a certain amount of trust that I think that you have to have in a person, and I think that like ride shares have been getting slightly better about checking their drivers and stuff. I know that there's still ongoing problems with like Uber and Lyft in that regard, but were there a way to try and mitigate that, like that specifically? I think that's the only real big hang up that I have with it, because I do like the concept. I think that like people trying to commute together to try and be more and being conscious of their individual carbon emissions and stuff. I think it's a good idea. It can have a slew of benefits, but it could also lead to you
Lead
getting
to,
kidnapped.
yeah, lead
The,
to
emer-
bye-byes.
the emergence of a serial killer.
Right. Yeah. This is how we get a Netflix documentary series made about me. Like, oh no, I got attacked or kidnapped by whoever.
Hey, I need a new one to watch, so I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. Just what I always wanted. Fame. Just not like this.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely have to have a safe aspect about it.
Mhm.
And I mean, it could be, like where you work at, it could be set up through work, or not just.
Now, I think you might be onto something there, or like potentially doing like a
No, like have the app like Drake says, but then have it to where you can go to the place of business and people have to be employed in order to get on that specific area in the app, and then you can meet per business, I should say, not just generally on an app, but
I feel like what I was getting ready to suggest was making it a public utility. And then I realized that in doing so, you're basically just recreating buses. So like, so I'm trying to redirect my
small
head from
buses.
that area. Yeah, they're just smaller buses. Yeah, but no, I like the idea of potentially having it tied to some sort of organization that at the very least, like somebody that might be able to have some like checks and balances on it to some degree or another, be that a business or a public utility or something along those lines. But I do think that the commuting and like the commuting like rideshare app, I think there is something there.
I mean, it's pretty popular, so reinventing that would be
Not a stretch.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a stretch, I don't think. It'd be very doable.
All right, Rob, you next.
Yeah, I think so. All right. So, let me pull up notes really quick. All right. So, in regards to the problem of aging mass transportation infrastructure, whenever I started thinking about this problem, I kept coming back to the concept of we shouldn't just be repairing these systems or finding like temporary ways um, to offset things, so that we might be making it a little bit easier just to repair things, but that we should be trying to modernize our the way we look at traffic and transportation infrastructure specifically, and trying to find ways to bring that into the 21st century, right? We've got all of these things that we're working on. We've got, millennia of experience at this point in time as a collective human people, in terms of city planning, in terms of roads, traffic infrastructure, transportation hubs, trains, buses, cars, planes, trains, you name it. So I think that there are a few key points that I want to try and address, firstly. So in trying to bring up our infrastructure to this like 21st century standard and trying to create smart infrastructure, right? Firstly is going to be transit dissemination. We already talked, or I talked a bit about this already. We've got a bunch of different modes of transit, and some places have more forms of these transit available to them than others. I think trying to take a good hard look at the equitable distribution of transportation access for people is an important thing to consider. There are towns out in the middle of Indiana, out in the middle of Missouri, out in the middle of name a state that are just kind of completely locked off the grid unless you have a car, unless you own a car or have access to someone that has a car for you. And then whenever we look at it, instead of just from a rural aspect, a more urban perspective, you can see where people become so reliant on specific forms of transportation, be it their cars, be it a subway, be it the ferry, what have you, and these things have to be run constantly. We notice this problem of them not being able to have the downtime necessary to get the repairs done or to keep it in running order. Unless it would cause, or if it were to have those things done, it would cause significant economic damage to persons, businesses, all sorts of things in local areas. So we need to be looking at equitable access to, in terms of means of transportation and travel provided to different travelers to kind of offset this workload across different platforms, so that people might be, or these systems might be able to have more downtime so that they can be repaired. I think that's the first thing that I wanted to address here. The second thing I wanted to address would be to help disseminate these traffic loads. This is where we start looking at smart transit systems, such as learning algorithm-based artificial intelligence that could control stoplights, walk lights, on and off ramp flow for highways, and would keep a consistent flow of traffic and minimal idle times for travelers. Because idling is going to be one of your larger causes for just, carbon emissions outside of long distance travel on your own. So I think in disseminating our traffic workload, by trying to get diverse means of traffic out there, by collecting all of this data and processing this data with the use of artificial intelligence, we might be able to try and cut down on these idle times, and we might be able to create consistent workflow for all of these different for traffic loads. Additionally, with all of this data that we'd be collecting, we could use apps, widgets, and public display screens so that everybody or whoever is looking for this information has this information readily available and at hand. This information would be continuously updated and provide travelers with traffic information, routing options for their personal travels, and options for means of travel across these routes using multiple transit platforms. So bikes, trains, ferries, trying to diversify these things and do a lot of the heavy lifting that we have to do if we're wanting to get from point A to point C. And in doing that specific part, we would be looking at people needing less individual ownership for vehicles. If you would be able to, get on an app and be able to say, oh, I can, there's a scooter just down the street. I can grab that, take it down to the bus station, hop on the bus, go across town. Boom, I'm at work in approximately 30 minutes. If assuming that the traffic information is, up to date and correct. So I guess in conclusion here, we're looking at transit dissemination across different kinds of modes of travel. We're looking at smart transit systems that collect and analyze data to help better keep the flow of traffic moving and give people equal access to quick, reliable transit information and modes of transportation. And Finn. I know that was a lot. So thoughts, comments, criticisms. Was it just a bunch of jargon? Is my first question.
So your idea is to pretty much link all the traffic together.
Correct. Yeah. To have like central processing nodes for traffic information that would be able to, create these smart systems for traffic. So creating learning algorithms that would be able to detect, hey, so every day for the last week, I've noticed that on this particular street, there has been a bunch of traffic that has been coming through here. So one, how does that affect traffic in the nearby area for other stoplights, for example? And is there a way that we could potentially be routing some of these people that are using this particular intersection to go to different, down different streets or different pathways that wouldn't really interfere with their own travel time, but would help disseminate the traffic load so that you don't have mile-long lines at a specific stoplight or something like that, or a bunch of traffic jams at intersections and stuff. So yeah, just creating smart traffic systems.
So how would you what would the smart traffic system, like how would they track all that?
So I have made a great little picture here that I'm going to put into our
Is that a rabbit?
It wasn't a rabbit. It was a very badly drawn like VW Bug. Don't judge me. It was the first car that came to mind. And I will put this in.
So, I mean, it seems like a lot of programming.
It is. I mean, so yes, first and foremost, it is. The thing that we would be worried about are places that we're collecting data for traffic, right? So these would include like weight sensors that we've got in streets already for different stoplights and intersections. This would be different cameras near highways, intersections, things that are already in use in a lot of big cities.
I was gonna say, could you almost use something like CCTV?
So sort of, yeah. And so that would like going a little bit further down the line, that's probably something similar that you would want to do anyway, because you wouldn't want something like this on like the internet per se. You would probably want it to be on like a local internet that wouldn't necessarily be something that I could um uh just get access to online to it, because that's something that you could probably do some pretty irreparable damage if you were able to get in and hack traffic systems and stuff.
Gosh, that sounds horrible.
So the gist of it is you are collecting this data, and we are already collecting a lot of this data as is. I mean, we've got things like Waze, we've got things like Google Maps. The people are manually putting a bunch of information into already. We have some of these different sensors in cities, be it cameras, weight sensors, things of that like, already track the amount of cars and workflow, like traffic flow that goes through specific intersections or on and off ramps, getting onto highways and stuff, to try and analyze, what are traffic patterns like, and are we able to do any kind of like engineering about this, or routing traffic, or doing something to try and better disseminate this information. So basically collecting data, and artificial intelligence, just a learning algorithm that can sort through this data and then proceed to relay this data to end users. End users in this instance being like traffic lights and walk signs and stuff of that nature, or apps, widgets, and public displays for personal use or commercial use.
Talking about personal use, just come on in.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, he's here.
No, that's a good idea though. I mean, I think doesn't like Google have a little bit of that, like whenever traffic's built up or something like that, they have like they'll have warnings and stuff like that. Hey, traffic might be built up here. Take a detour.
Yeah, I mean, Google tracks phones. They can track the speed of the phone, so they know when traffic's backed up.
Correct.
I don't
And
I
it's
don't
just
I don't think it tells you to take a detour unless you have an actual destination mapped out.
correct. It doesn't automatically route you around things. It does give you, well, okay, so it can automatically give you either, it can automatically reroute you, but generally speaking, it doesn't. It does give you optional routes sometimes, but very often it'll just say like, hey, there's, a yellow line up ahead, which means something, something slowing things down. A red line ahead, there's probably like a traffic stop. It's kind of centralizing Google Maps, Waze, and our actual like transit system, right? Like specifically like stoplights and things that actually allow traffic to flow around. We centralize these things, and we're able to use all of this data that we've got kind of compartmentalized across a bunch of different platforms. Then we can make a more smoothly operating transit system, something that's able to disseminate the workload across a bunch of different platforms, and something that will help us move things around efficiently, or at least give us a variety of options to move things down more efficiently.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, there's a lot
I'm glad
of behind the scenes stuff.
I don't think it's really that bad though. Like you could with sensors and stuff like that, and then like even just like the cameras that we have now that like detect cars or what like that, something like that. I feel like the software behind it would be the hardest part, but the actual inputs, sensors wise, that wouldn't be hard at all.
Yeah,
That would be
I'd
actually
argue
pretty
that
easy.
even most of that work's already done.
Yes.
And that it's
That's
just
what I was
meant
gonna
to
say.
like be kept in mind as we're repairing and improving upon infrastructure in the future. Is like, oh, these are good ideas, and maybe we should continue to use these things.
I mean, with the cars, with their Bluetooth capability, you can just tell a car to, hey, put my destination as this, And so it would tell you alternate routes if you had some.
Sure, sure. And with the increasing like interconnectedness of just kind of like all technology, right? Like, you know, being able to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connect to your car or to other things around you, we're creating this like big technological mesh all around us, right? All of these different devices connecting to each other and things. So being able to centralize this information and then be able to like process it and then distribute it in a digestible way for us to use, I think is probably like a direction to go. I would like to think a good direction to go, but it's at least a direction to go.
So how different are the apps gonna be from Google Map and Apple Map? I think you meant they were gonna be a little more sophisticated, but like how more sophisticated?
So my immediate thought process would be if I was to try and mock this up in my head. So it would be akin to having various rideshare apps or like transit apps, like for Amtrak or Expedia, or you know, people that deal with transit, right? Be it planes, trains, automobiles, boats, what have you. You'd be able to get onto this app. You could see traffic information for the local area. You could input your destination like you'd be using Google Maps or Waze. And you could see, you could input different modes of travel for yourself. Like, I've got a car. I want to take my car to this place. What's the fastest way for me to just take my car from here to B, from A to B? And it would effectively be a smart Google Maps or smart Waze. In terms of like using it for transit on a wider scale, though, it could also include bus timing, arrivals and departures, train arrival departures, planes, just kind of an interconnected place for you to get all of your transit information that you might need if you're going anywhere outside of walking distance.
So we have about a minute left of this video. So I was just looking at the constraints and criteria. It looks like it aligns with a lot of the stuff, except maybe the time to complete and the cost to do it.
Sure.
So
I think both of those would probably be valid criticisms of this project.
yes. Because I mean, if you're talking about putting stuff, you know, like weight sensors and stuff, I mean, they're going to have to shut the road down to do that.
I guess my question would be, we already have this infrastructure in place. Are we not collecting this data already?
Don't know.
I also
don't-
legitimately don't know the answer.
I
but
wouldn't
feel
think
like
so, because I think the weight sensors are just triggered to the lights that they're right next to.
you're probably right. And I guess I feel like that's probably me looking at it through hindsight glasses, but I feel like maybe it might be good for us to consider that. So yes, I guess going back to cost and time, it would probably take a lot of time and effort because we would have to update as we're repairing all of this infrastructure, these sensors and stuff, to make it so that we are able to collect data off of